I'm gonna dive right into it. But before I start, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tim O'Brien. I live in Seattle. I work for Walmart. We have an office there. And I run FinOps for Walmart, which is really just, I'm sort of the point of the spear across a bunch of different departments, strategy, tech platform. What I'm going to talk about today is a topic that I could talk about literally for 8 or 9 hours straight, because every single part of it, it's like a fractal landscape. You can really zoom in, and there's really interesting things happening. But my main job is to save money so that our customers can live better. That's our motto: save money, live better. I want to start out with the fact that efficiency for Walmart is a core value. It's what we're built on, right? And so this is our founder, Sam Walton. He's got a list of 10 rules. I'll focus on the last 2. Rule number 9 is control your expenses better than your competition. Rule number 10 is my favorite, which is swim upstream. Ignore the conventional wisdom. One thing we do at Walmart is we focus on our daily cloud spend. And that's one of the ways that we get in front of how much we're spending, right? It's that getting that awareness in people's minds. If you're a project, and it doesn't matter what level you're at, you can be a VP, you can be a director, you can be a senior manager, you can be an engineer. Having an awareness of what is the thing I'm responsible for and what is our spend on cloud every day. Why is that important? Because you can identify trends. So it's no different from if you're an investor. You're looking at the performance of your investments. The other thing that we like to do in cloud in particular is really remind people that money has value. So we might have a database that has a $500 spike one day, and someone might say, well, it's only $500, what does it matter? And I'm sure in fintech and in the financial industry, you probably have similar conversations. Well, $500 a day, if you annualize that, that's a significant amount of money. So I like to make people think about that. What if I told you there was a suitcase in this building with $182,000 in it? Would you stop what you're doing and go look for it? You'd take it seriously. So making value really personal for people matters. The other thing that we do at Walmart is every extra expense, all the waste that you might see, we put it in terms of customer experience. So how many customer visits is that waste worth, right? How many more units of a particular product did we have to sell to compensate for the fact that you might be using the wrong database for this project? And that's really making it clear we're here for one purpose, and that is to serve our customers. So we do this whole daily spend ritual, I'll call it, and if you want to learn more about it, there's videos of me talking at FinOps about this and more. I want to focus this talk on something a little bit different, which is how do we talk about efficiency? Because I want to relate it directly to what this group does, what the FINOS group does, and how I think we can work together to sort of lay the foundation for talking about efficiency in a new way. So we establish daily spend goals for all of our departments, all of our projects. Sometimes it's a smooth process of setting those targets. Sometimes there's some friction. But we basically tell all of the departments, this is what we expect you to spend on a daily rate by this date. And then our job is to get them to that spend. And it actually might be an increase in spend if it's an area of growth. But that's what we do. We get people to focus on their daily rate. One of the things that we have to do, though, to get to that target is talk about efficiency. And in cloud, one of the things that everyone has learned over the past 2 to 3 years is that you have to think about efficiency. It's not a done deal. It's not like just, oh, run a CPU graph and you're done. Udom, in a prior session about focus, said, FinOps isn't just like a sprint. You don't just do FinOps and you're done. It's a way of thinking. And so I have an approach on efficiency that we've used and that we're starting to develop, and I think we can bring it to a larger audience. And it's focused on collaboration. So this is how we organize our FinOps department. I'm in that orange section, the core FinOps support team. We have a FinOps steerco where we have, senior executives get to help us set targets, set standards. They get to define the process. How do we think about a cost model? How do we think about savings, right? If we're going to talk about public cloud and private cloud, how do we all agree on what the assumptions are? That's what the steerco is there for. Then we have technology platform teams. And at all companies at our level of scale, you have subject matter experts in Cassandra, in Kafka, in how to use Azure, how to use GCP. All the different tools that we very likely have a team that's dedicated to that tool. And I'm sure you all have the same experience. Then we have what I call customer pillar teams. And those are the teams, the departments, that are responsible for serving the needs and requirements of our customers. At Walmart, that's US Omnichannel, that's Sam's, that's International. And those are the teams that are really doing the work for the customer. So those are the teams that also have to focus on efficiency because they have to make cloud work for their business. So if you look at those three things, executives at the steerco level, technology platform teams, and then customer pillars, the FinOps group there is in the middle. And our job is to help those teams communicate effectively. So efficiency is something everyone is after. And it's such a weird area. Again, I could go on for hours about it. You'll go to any other conference and people will talk about efficiency and they're like, it's easy, here's a graph. It's all about CPU. Every company, by the way, when you ask them how they're doing with efficiency, they're like, we're doing great. In reality, it's way more complex than that. It's because it's a team sport. It's not a dashboard, right? It's not a vendor that knows how to do it better than your own engineers. It's getting your technology experts to talk to your application teams and to do so in a way that's collaborative. That sounds really easy. Like I could say that sentence again, you'd be like, okay, yeah, great. We'll get the Cassandra team to talk to the application teams, and then it'll all be done. One of the issues with this, though, that I've found in the past is the question always pops up, well, who gets to claim credit for those savings? That's a question I would advise you never try to avoid having people ask that question. Because what you need to do, and this is just for Cassandra, right? Think about Cassandra, all the other tools that we use. You want to have your specialist teams, your subject matter experts, run analysis for your application teams, and then you want them to have a negotiation over whether that opportunity makes sense for them. I'll just let that sit for a little bit. It's about evaluating the opportunities that you might identify for savings, for efficiency, and it's about having that conversation between two different parties. And so what we have done at Walmart is we've started to build a shared efficiency clearinghouse, if you will. We have subject matter expert teams, Cassandra, Kafka. You might have a team that's focused on Redis, or a team that's focused on containers. 20, 30 of these teams. They run a set number of analyses every day, and they populate a shared database, and then we have a process by which application teams are notified that these opportunities exist. What FinOps' role is to measure what that engagement level is. And that's clear. FinOps is not being held responsible for the amount of savings achieved. What we're being held responsible for is that there's a conversation, there's a process that's underway. So let's talk about that efficiency opportunity exchange, because that's really what I want to talk about, and I want to finish early, so if there are any questions, I can answer them. That exchange is like I said, the Cassandra team has a deep understanding of usage patterns and anti-patterns. And I'm picking on Cassandra, but let's talk about Cosmos DB on a platform like Azure. Cosmos DB, you might be using a database, you have a bunch of collections, right? And they might have a query that runs every day that says, identify a collection that's provisioned for 50,000 reads and writes per second, but maybe you're averaging 2, right? And that's a very clear case of we might be wasting a little bit of money there. And that's something where they would file a finding in a shared exchange that would show up with visibility for everybody, and we would follow up a week and say, hey, Sam's, did you look at that finding? Did you execute on that finding that team filed for you, right? It sounds easy, but you'd be surprised the number of times that we get teams maybe not paying attention. So that efficiency opportunity exchange that I'm sort of focused on Cassandra for, that's what we're doing, and that's what's driven most of the sorry, I have a really bad stutter. Most of the savings has been shared by that sort of shared approach. But what I want to talk about is something a little more complex, and I think it's an opportunity for us as a community to really start to collaborate. A lot of people, when you talk about efficiency and saving money on cloud, they think it's just a CPU, right? They think, oh, we'll just identify the stuff that's being underutilized, and it's easy. Well, I want to focus on the sort of bottom part of this slide. We need to graduate from CPU and memory to application efficiency. And this is maybe the biggest missing thing I've seen in the industry. When we're talking about savings, it's not just about, that system ran at 2% 2% utilization last week, we can dial it down. It's never about that. It's about architecture, it's about reliability, it's about seasonal risk, which a lot of you face in the financial industry. I mean, I think you might have been the one to bring this up earlier, which was we're all entering into that season where all the transactions have to work 24/7. Walmart is no different. Holiday season is upon us, right? And the other thing is business metrics. Rarely have I seen anyone or a vendor at a conference stand up and say, we have a CPU utilization report that we can correlate with how much revenue was generated per user interaction, right? Or we have a time series graph that's going to measure how much did it cost you to run the cloud per order placed. That's not a level of complexity that I've seen in the industry yet. I think it's one we need to build together. So on that note, I want to talk about a new role that we've sort of noticed has started to emerge. You're in the financial industry, so maybe you recognize these people. This is someone from Billions on the bottom, and this is a character from Margin Call. Maybe not the most positive movie to bring up at this conference, but what I want to call out is, in FinOps, there's a role that I'm seeing that's starting to emerge. It's the FinOps analyst. It's someone who spans several areas of expertise. They're technologists. They might know everything about Cosmos. They might know everything about Cosmos and Kafka, right? But they also know about finance. They know what the weighted average cost of capital is. They also know how to think about sort of TCO and TBM. These people are the ones that are going to identify those hidden opportunities. And some of our largest savings opportunities are always the things that are not obvious. It's maybe we shouldn't use Cassandra for this. Maybe we should be archiving this data and putting it into a GCS bucket. Maybe we need to leverage caching more. Maybe there's a correlation between the architecture of that Tomcat app or the versions of SKUs we're using in a particular public cloud provider. It's never the efficiency opportunities in one app that you're after. It's the signal across the whole ecosystem. And to get to that, we need to move beyond Excel, Looker, Power BI. We need to move beyond, frankly, a lot of the vendor tools that we have for cloud efficiency. And we need to start getting into a more complex level of analysis. Jupyter Notebooks, I saw Capital One also follows similar things. You'll hear about that next. We're starting to use LLMs. We're trying to train LLMs and using LangChain to see if we can get them to sort of devise some interesting things we might have missed. ARIMA models, so BigQuery ML is something that we use a lot. But what I want you to think about is, this is an opportunity. We just saw a demo of tools that people are making for traders that work at banks, so they can take a look at the opportunity of different types of investments. I think cloud is no different. The size of the cloud market, according to the Forrester survey, I think last year, is maybe $500 billion. That seems like maybe an underestimate. It's projected to exceed, I think, 1.6 trillion in 5 years, right? We're at a point now where we really need to start thinking about our cloud investments and how much money we spend on cloud in as sophisticated a way as you would think about an option spread, or you would think about risk. And that's just not something that we're doing now. We're starting to. So what are we missing to even begin that conversation? I'll just say it. There's no standards for any of this. If you ask any company, how's your efficiency? They're like, it's great. Well, what is that? There's no number we can share. I can't look at a bank or another company and say, oh, we're running at a efficiency level of 3.5 as defined by the global standards on cloud efficiency. That does not exist. So we're all kind of making it up as we go. But then I want you to focus on data. If you are a company operating at scale, the majority of your cloud spend is data. It's not a stateless web server. It's not serverless systems running. And I say that a little bit pointedly. Any vendor that you bring in to do FinOps for you, they're going to run you a CPU report. And that's great if it's a stateless product. But, and I want you to see the last thing I wrote down there in red, it might be too small. Have you ever tried to run a CPU utilization report on your Cassandra databases? Because if they're being used, they're probably at 1% to 2%. And the worst thing you can do to your business is scale down your Cassandra database if it has a throughput commitment that is essential to operate your business. There are things on this list: Cassandra, Kafka, Elasticsearch, Postgres, MySQL, M3DB, MongoDB, Redis, Neo4j. None of these can be measured easily. In fact, each and every line on that list of just open source data products has a completely novel approach to assessing efficiency. But is there a book? Is there a standard? Can we share that between companies and teams? No, we're all creating that from scratch ourselves. And I just want to expand that to public cloud PaaS services: Cloud SQL, Firestore, Cosmos DB, Elastic Cache, Aurora. All of these different products, they definitely have recommendations from their providers. So Amazon, Google, Oracle, and Microsoft will all give you a series of suggestions, but none of those suggestions are tied in any way to the specific risk profile. I'm going to skip one slide, to the specific risk profile of your app, right? So statement number one, there are no standards for technologies. Statement number two, there's no concept of cloud efficiency risk. And you'll see up there I said, what do you mean? What's cloud efficiency risk? And I'll say, exactly. No one's even talking about it yet. For an app, let's say pharmacy, right? What's their cloud efficiency risk? If you identify an efficiency opportunity, are you then also assessing what are their plans for traffic spikes? What are their high availability requirements? Do they have a DR plan that's so critical that they really can suffer zero downtime if there's a regional shift? Is the business experiencing rapid growth and adoption? Like, is cloud cost really the thing that you need to talk to that project about right now? Some of us in various investments in Gen AI, right now is not the time to tell people to scale up or scale down. Right now is the time to tell them to innovate, right? And so your efficiency system needs to be aware of these, what I would call business and political realities. But a lot of people dive into the efficiency discussion by just saying we're going to send alerts to everybody, they're going to act on it, we're going to go. The other thing to talk about too, and I'm sorry if I'm going to end this with a bunch of complaints, but I'm setting up an opportunity. We don't talk about architecture when we talk about efficiency. And this is the craziest thing. We're really just talking to people about what your CPU is at, right? But we're never having that conversation like, okay, you might have used a relational database for this, but you've scaled to the point where that no longer makes any sense at all, because now we have to throw a sharded relational database at it. And you should be using something like a NoSQL database. Maybe you should move to Cassandra. Or maybe you use Cassandra when you could have just used a GCS bucket, right? Those are the things, by the way, where you can achieve the most cloud savings. It's this slide. It's not what is your CPU utilization at average over a week. And these are the toughest discussions. I'll say at the end there, have you ever tried to tell an architect that they're using the wrong database, right? That's not a positive conversation. Luckily, I work at a company where we're building this into how we talk about architecture. We're building it into how we talk about platform standards. But I'd say the world is about to wake up to the fact that the efficiencies that we've all achieved using the simple things, there's a limit. And to really break on through that limit, you're going to have to do some very complex discussions. But, and this is where I feel like there's an opportunity. One more thing I've noticed is every company does it completely in a different way. So one company like mine, we have a very complex approach. We have a FinOps team that's bridging the gap between two different areas of focus. Other companies might be using like Cloud Composer and throwing that to application teams, which is great. Another company might just be like, we don't have a FinOps team, we just use the recommendations from our cloud providers and send them straight to app teams. That's usually not the best idea, by the way, because again, cloud providers are awesome partners. I love working with them, but they don't know a thing about your business. And then lastly, you have people who just adopt a series of different FinOps vendors, and those are great. FinOps vendors are awesome. They're also great partners. But they also haven't built in an awareness of, who are your architects? What are their preferences? What are your different businesses? And where I work, it's not like we have one business. We have a series of business units that have different risk parameters. So I'm going to end a little bit early. Focus. Focus is something the FinOps Foundation is working on, and Udom is the chair, along with Mike Fuller, I think, who's also a co-chair. There's a lot of activity. There's members of this organization that are participating as well. The goal for Focus is this. It's to start that conversation between cloud providers for us to come up with a standard approach for cloud billing, right? So that we don't have to talk to 3 or 4 different providers and 20,000 SaaS providers and have a different concept of what is a discount, what do we do with commitments. I have a much longer term view here, and I think that if we can establish a standard for exchanging cost information about cloud, then we can start building the transparent markets that you all are familiar with, right? We can start buying and selling cloud resources with standard tools. We can start leveraging systems that you built, like Legend, or other systems, to start creating a more market-oriented approach to buying and managing cloud resources. If you want to look 20, 30 years ahead, I think the whole world of cloud providers is going to change dramatically. It's going to look more like a commodities market and less like us having different agreements. But that's long-term view. What I think we can do in the short term is I think we actually do need to all get in a room and start talking about, hey, let's just keep it simple. Is there a standard set of measures for how I can judge a Kafka cluster as being used efficiently? Is there a standard set of things that we can do to all agree that these are the things we're going to measure Postgres with? One day, maybe we get to the point where we can all share that information anonymously and give each other grades on how efficient we are. But it would be far better for us to start that group in open source. How do we start a collective conversation, FinOS and FinOps working together, to start defining what is a common standard? As if we don't, we're all going to continue to do the same work in different areas. And we can do powerful things as long as we're working together out in the open. Mr. Olds said just that during the keynote. And I think this is a chance for us to really start saying, we need to define some shared standards. They might not be perfect, but we can get started. How do you, in an open source way, judge whether or not you're being efficient in these areas? How do we have an open source definition of architecture? What's the definition of workloads, right? Like a website is not measured in the same way as a cron job that wakes up to balance a book for finance. How do we put things into categories that then we can then establish standards for? And then lastly, this is super important. It's not just that we're trying to save money. We're trying to save money so that people can live better, right? That's our motto. We need to save money so that we can cloud better, if you want to think about it that way. How do we define efficiency in the context of risk? And I feel like 10 years from now, I hope someone's on this stage talking about those metrics, talking about a way so that Citi and Capital One and Walmart and all these different companies can get together and say, yeah, we pushed our Kafka clusters to a 3.7. How about you all? Like, no, we're still at a 5.6. That sounds unrealistic, but I feel like it's time for us to take a quixotic approach. It's time for us to build that, that target. So anyway, I'll stop. I've got another, according to the timer, I've got 4 minutes and 45 seconds left. So anybody have any questions? Did that make any sense? It's probably the first question. So, yeah. That is an awesome question. So what he asked is, there has to be a standard. Like if I'm running a Cassandra cluster on public, like something like Azure or GCP, and then when I move it to on-prem, we'd have to have a standard. That's exactly what we do. So we use private cloud as much as we use public cloud, and we use a lot of Cassandra, a lot of Kafka. And it's that definition of like what is the baseline for a particular data product? I think we internally already have that. I think what would benefit the industry is if we all got together and exchanged those ideas. If we did nothing, again, I want to say this about focus. Focus is going to create meaningful output. We're going to be exchanging feeds using the focus standard. But the most meaningful output for me right now is the connections and the conversations that we've established between all of the people that are contributing to it. And I think if we were to get together and talk about efficiency, you know, FINOS and the people in the FinOps group, what we would find is there's lots of shared advantages. Again, working together, we can do powerful things. So, all right. That was a long answer to a short question. I apologize. Any other questions? None. Anyone have a tough question for me?
So you mentioned the cloud ops or FinOps team is kind of like an information exchange. Do you have a function that operates in the standard FinOps model of cost optimizations for savings plans or whatever?
Oh, totally. Yeah. So the core FinOps groups do that. I said groups. Core FinOps, the thing that's in the orange there, it's actually split between strategy, technology, and tech finance, right? So we have a core function that looks at, you know, committed use discounts, reserved instances, discount rates. Yes. So we do some of those standard FinOps domains and capabilities in that area. But the important point to make is the customer pillars are really doing the work for the customer. They also have FinOps practitioners. We have a core FinOps team, but the FinOps is done by the customer pillars. So too much centralization often does not achieve what you want it to. It just makes people blame the FinOps team. So anybody else? Any questions? Nothing? That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you want to work on this stuff, let's start the conversation. I'm over at the FinOps Foundation, and I'm going to start showing up at FinOps as well, because you all are working on some interesting things, specifically things like Legend. I feel like there's and you have like Jupyter notebook templates. That's something I think I want to try to establish for this as well. So, all right, great. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference.